Hello and a warm welcome to you all. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Marc Morley and I'm honoured to be hosting a panel of distinguished experts who are here to help us navigate the intersection of technology, pedagogy and leadership in education. Before we dive into discussion today, I'd like to briefly introduce SARUA and Executive Education Online, who are co-hosting the webinar. The Southern African Regional Universities Association is a dynamic network of universities from across the Southern African Development Community region. The association plays a vital role in fostering collaboration, knowledge sharing and innovation among higher education institutions within the region. By driving digital transformation and capacity building initiatives, SARUA aims to enhance the quality and the impact of higher education, ensuring that institutions it represents are well equipped to meet the evolving demands of global educational landscape. Executive Education Online is an online learning platform. It was designed to deliver high-level, on-demand curated executive training. The courses are crafted to help senior professionals enhance their strategic thinking, their leadership skills, and their understanding of modern business challenges, all with a strong focus on good governance. Their executive leadership series, all of which has been endorsed by the Good Governance Academy, includes business relationships, digital transformation, digital security, and good governance. So thank you to both organisations for this initiative. I hope that anyone online today who is not a member of SARUA will follow the links in the chat window to explore the benefits that they offer. And likewise, please check out execed.online to join the growing number of executives who have already benefited from their guidance. Today, we're going to be exploring key themes around digital competencies, innovative pedagogy, enhancing engagement, and future-ready education. I encourage you all to post your questions throughout the session. We will address these, as many as we can, during the Q&A session later on. And if you'd like to pose a question during the event, please raise your hand and we will be happy to open the microphones. Just a tip, for anyone not familiar with Zoom, if you can't see the control panel at the bottom of your screen, if you hit the ALT key on your keyboard, it'll pop up. So I'd like to start today by asking our colleagues to introduce themselves and maybe share some of your background or recent experiences which have provided you with insights in today's chosen topic. So can we start with you, Abri?
Thank you, Marc. And good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Abri Hoffman, and I am the Strategic Focus Area Lead for SARUA. Now, it's a big title for a very limited job in the sense that in SARUA we work with the network, we use the power of the network, and I'm just basically facilitating that process. But my background has been in technology most of my life. I've played roles in architecture and program management, and I've dabbled into risk management and audit as well. So I think where we are right now, it's a good space to start utilizing those technologies. On the academic side, I've been lecturing part-time since 2006, and it's a real passion. So it's a real privilege to work with you guys in terms of what we are trying to do here, and looking forward to further collaboration. Thank you, Marc.
Thanks, Abri. Gary, can we go to you next?
Yeah, thanks, Marc. So I'm the owner of Executive Education Online that Marc described just now, which is actually part of a company called IT Winners, which I formed, I'm thinking now, it's nearly 25 years ago. And look, I think the thing that's perhaps of most interest, I hope, for you guys is that my passion for years, I go back a long time in IT, but my passion for years has been trying to solve the disconnect between technical people and everyone else, particularly leaders. And so for years, we did consulting and training around all those areas. During the pandemic, we decided to shift gears a bit after a lot of thinking. And it's odd that it dawned on me, after years of not really realizing it, that education actually is my #1 passion. Born out a little bit from frustration of my own, and some of the frustrations from school days to university days, and generally some of the traditional training that goes out for executives and experts in technology, which I feel never really hit the mark or were value for money or made real change. And so after a lot of thinking, we launched Executive Education Online 2 or 3 years ago. And I think, all I would say finally is that I think the challenge here mostly is for those, and I'm presuming there's no one, Abri, on this call who are kind of technology experts from the IT side. It's mostly leaders in the business of university education, is that we've finally got to overcome this barrier of fear of technology and always handing things over technical experts. It's the answer is not technical. The answer is just confidence, willingness to adjust your business approach and business change, and applying basic good principles in terms of overseeing and guiding and leading what we need from the technology to deliver. And that's where the governance side also affected me for a long, long time. I've been involved in the governance of technology for also nearly 20 years. But that's my general, where I'm coming from. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Gary. So now, last but by no means least, Schoeman.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests. My name is Schoeman Loubser, and currently I'm the Chief Technology Officer for 2U. We are a parent company owning a number of online education platforms, for example, getsmarter.com, edX.org. We have, and as well as a bootcamps business, presenting bootcamps to a variety of students. We are a global company, and we really believe in online education as the gateway to give anyone the ability for upward mobility. We have a saying called no back row, which is something that we really strive towards, and that is to give students the ability to not have to pack up their life and move to a city with a university, but rather log on to a web platform and have the ability to do online education. I've been with the company for just over 8 years. Originally, I joined Get Smarter as the data lead. I stood up a data capability within the company. Shortly after that, we were acquired by 2U, and I've been with the company since. Education is absolutely my passion, and that is why I'm still with the company, even though I am very much a technologist at heart, and that is my field of expertise and specialization.
Wonderful. Thanks, Schoeman, and thank you, gentlemen. So to start, let's begin with a foundational issue: digital competencies. So in an era when technology is omnipresent, digital literacy is no longer optional, but it's essential for education leaders. So Schoeman, if I can come to you first, as the Chief Technology Officer at 2U, a company that's been at the forefront of online education, what do you believe are the critical digital competencies that education leaders need to develop? And how do you ensure that your platform supports the development of these for both the faculty and students?
Sure. So I would categorize it, and you can approach this question from various perspectives, but I will choose 3. I would approach it from having digital literacy, having data literacy, and having ethical decision making. So from a digital literacy perspective, it is important for you to understand the tools that you are using, to have a handle on what it is that you use. As an example, we use within our company Moodle, Canvas, as well as Open edX. We are also part of the technical oversight committee of the Open edX open source project. So we have influence within that community. The point is, you need to know your tools that you are using. There are certain functionalities, certain ways that the content is being presented, that you want the content to be presented to, and the way that you want your students to engage with the content. And so you need to understand how you can achieve what you want to achieve from a content engagement perspective. Then from a data literacy perspective, I would say in today's world, data is abound. It doesn't get less, it's getting more. So to have the ability to collect, analyze, and interpret data to make informed decisions. I'll use this as an example. What we do on our platforms, we have logs of student engagement within the platforms to ensure that the students engage with the content, engage with the actual platform. And it is important to understand where the engagement drops off. So we've done a study on engagement with videos, because you would always think, okay, and I'm not referring to like a talking head video. I'm referring to a well-produced video that serves up content for the students. We've done a lot of research on where's the drop-off rate of engagement for the students on viewing the video. So for example, the video is 5 minutes long and they drop off after 2 minutes. Why is that the case? And then start looking specifically at the point of 2 minutes. Did the content become boring? Did someone start saying something? Did the student get everything out of the video that they wanted, and now they don't need to watch the rest of the video because the question that they need to answer has already been answered within that first 2 minutes? Whatever it is that you want to achieve, that would be really important for you to understand the data and analyze the data. So data literacy, really important. And the same goes for any other way of producing or serving up your content, like the reading material within the learning platform, quizzes, etc. Then lastly, I would say something that has become really important over the last while is ethical decision making. Just like students can use generative AI to generate their own answers for the questions, lecturers and educators can also use generative AI to generate the content for the courses. And so there needs to be an important intentionality from the educators to decide, what do I want to use generative AI for? Where is it appropriate? Where should I be doing this, or where should I not be doing it? And so that would be for me 3 key areas: digital literacy, data literacy, and ethical decision making.
Wonderful. Thanks, Schoeman. If I can come to you now, Abri, within the context of your work within Southern African universities, what challenges have you encountered when attempting to equip leadership with the necessary digital competencies, and how have you approached building these on a regional scale?
Thanks, Mark. And yeah, from a SARUA perspective, we are actually brand new and very young in digital transformation. So I can't really speak from a SARUA perspective, but what I can do is from my various involvement with universities. And I really hope that from a SARUA perspective that we get together and get these questions answered. But just looking at broad challenges, I mean, first off, as Schoeman has mentioned there, digital literacy. There are huge gaps, and especially in terms of the fast pace at which you see the development of technology these days. Schoeman's mentioned generative AI, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very difficult to keep up with what's happening and what's available and how we use it, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we treat this gap of digital literacy, and how do we make sure that we can address it? There's also always the point of resistance to change. As humans, it's not in our nature to want to change. And the changes in data availability, the changes in the technology availability, the utilization and how we use technology has far superseded our ability to change. So we need to start building the capability. And I think if I can latch on here, I was in a session the other day where somebody asked, so where do we see, will digital transformation still exist 20 years from today? And my view on this is that digital transformation is not an end goal. It's an ability or a capability. And as long as we start thinking about that, because we will have change continuously forever. So there will always be something to transform towards. So don't see it as a end goal. The third point there would be resource constraints, especially in SADC. So we're looking at already struggling with student numbers, how we house them, et cetera, et cetera. We move on from there to technological constraints, and we've really seen that throughout the pandemic, where bandwidth just becomes challenging. I mean, even these days, trying to fit everybody that's here on camera would be fantastic, but we just don't have the bandwidth to do that. But apart from that, we also have to start thinking about resource constraints from a learner perspective. And what we're doing is that we provide more and more technology and more ways for students to learn. The problem with this is that although it's focused and we aim to personalized learning, we provide more choices, more volumes of data, and actually make it more difficult for them to choose what it is that I want to do. And specifically, to Schoeman's point of dropping off in a video after 2 minutes, what are those reasons? So we really need to understand those. Then diverse educational environments. I mean, if we look at the membership of SARUA, it is so huge from one side to the other in terms of small universities with very limited capability to large universities with lots of capability. How do we make sure that we learn from each other? And for SARUA, it's really an important point that we're able to do that. Lastly, policy and regulatory hurdles is a big thing that we need to look into. And how do we move with the times? There's a meeting on Friday that one of our SARUA focus area leads are presenting at the SADC leaders in terms of policy and regulatory, et cetera. So it becomes more and more important to make sure that we are able to move with the times. I think just touching on a few of the things that we would like to do, we need to start looking into customized training programs. And I mean, Schoeman, we'd love to hear a lot more from you because that is your forte, to bring forth this customized and innovative platform. But then peer learning networks, how do we learn from each other? We really need to make sure and build that. And later on in the session, I will share a QR code, colleagues, for that. We'd just like to understand who of you would be interested in joining some of these networks. Collaboration with tech partners, you choose one example. So thanks for being here, Schoeman. But we need to look wider, AWS, IBM, et cetera. So how do we collaborate with these entities? And how can we do it where we don't have to go one university at a time, but rather as a network? Looking at infrastructure investment, there are huge plans from SADC in terms of what needs to be done in digital transformation. So how do we make sure that investment is done in the right places? And then I think lastly would be a cultural change initiatives. How do we make sure that we start adapting? The first things that we saw as we introduced generative AI was, how do we stop this? How do we block this thing that's going to happen? And it took the best part of a year, or even perhaps sometimes more of that, to say that it's actually a tool that we have to embrace. We can't stop it. The ethical utilization of that is critical, as Schoeman said. But how do we embrace it? How do we make sure that this becomes part of what we do? So I think I want to park it there, and would love to hear some comments later on. Thanks, Marc.
Wonderful. Thanks, Abri. Gary, from your experience with executive education online, what strategies and digital tools have proven the most effective when educating leaders and helping them apply what they've learned? It would be great to pick up on your personal focus on outcomes rather than objectives also, if possible.
Yeah, so look, as far as that goes, I think what I found was, or it was driven really by the frustration of the traditional approaches, was to come up with an approach that is much more stimulating, enjoyable, and sticks, you know. And going to Schoeman's point about the 2-minute video, you know, there's only so much that people can absorb in a period of time, and so what we've tried to do is use tools, you know, video creators, AI tools that do text to voice, that, you know, really enable you at much lower cost to produce very powerful media that is much more engaging than the old school, I mean, dare I say, you know, the old PowerPoint slide approach, or, you know, going back in time, the foils on the overhead projector, you know. So media gives us great opportunities, and the AI tools allow us to produce this media at a much lower cost. Now, obviously, at Schoeman's environment, where, you know, and I visited and seen what they do, you know, where you've got really professional capabilities for real quality material, especially when it's going to be shared across multiple universities. Obviously, it's a really good idea to produce high-class, good quality content. For us, we're a small business, but I think, you know, in the university area, obviously, budgets are never great. So there are opportunities for both ends of this. I think it's amazing what you can do on a very low budget and still produce high-class material. Marc, maybe just pick up, because I'll forget this if I don't mention it. Just picking up what Abri said at the very end. And this has become an absolute passion of mine. And it was like a thing that dawned on me over the last few years, that the culture is actually the #1 factor. When I say culture, I mean the culture that the leadership puts out. And in this particular case, and because everything revolves around people at the end of the day, we can have all these technologies, all these tools, but it's the people that matter. And in this particular case, it's the students at one end of the spectrum, and the lecturers and professors and professionals at the other end of the spectrum. Now, and I think what we need to do if we're going to make these changes, and as you said, Abri, look, this is just digital transformation is just another technical buzzword. After cloud computing and whatever back, you can trace them going back in time. We've had changes going on all the time, including technology changes. This is just another one, which actually has come at a time when I think business people have finally realized they have to get involved. And the culture here is a passion that gets fed across everyone else, which is, this is a massive opportunity. This is going to give us results. This is going to lower costs. This is going to help us engage our students, and a passion which is collaborative. So we're not going to do this in isolation, which I think has happened in the past. We're going to embrace our students, get them involved in helping us figure out what they need. This has gone on in all the other sectors. If you go from travel to banking to retail to everything else, it's been a collaboration and a shift to empower the user, which in this case is the student. And if the culture's not done well, you get a standoff, and it tends to fail. So I just mentioned that.
Yeah. Thanks, Gary. So let's shift our focus now to innovative pedagogy. Technology opens up new avenues for teaching and learning, but the question is how to do this effectively. So Abri, based on your experience in driving digital transformation, how do you integrate technology into pedagogy without compromising the quality of education? And could you share examples of innovative teaching models you've implemented successfully?
Thank you, Marc. So maybe if you'll allow me, I just want to touch a little bit in terms of the research currently doing, looking at learning styles, personalized learning, and the influence of artificial intelligence on that. So I'm going to touch on those items because these are the things that really excite me. And where I'm starting off is just start looking at blended learning models. So how do students learn? What makes them want to learn? How do we get them to engage? And if we start looking at the research, at the literature in terms of learning styles or educational theories, etc., the one thing that keeps on popping up is that the student that keeps on keeping on, the student that endures, is the student that's successful. So there's very limited proof that any of these theories make a good student a better student, because the good student will already endure. But how do we get the struggling student to keep on? And especially, essentially, as Schoeman said, let's understand, let's look at the data. But can we do this more interactively? So those blended learning models, when do I want to read? When do I want to have an online class? When is something online good enough? And when do I need contact? When is contact in person more appropriate than contact in a Zoom session like this, for instance? So let's start thinking around those blended models and what we can do and how we do it. And especially get that students just before the 2 minutes that they drop off from that video to catch them and make sure that they continue. Because, come on, it may be that we need to adapt the video. It may be that we need to introduce a different approach at that point in time. So it will be very interesting to understand that the technology and so forth. The second one there is really in terms of flipped classroom. I saw huge successes lately in terms of the whole flipped classroom approach. I just had a meeting just yesterday with one of our local universities here in Cape Town, where they started working with information system students at the university and collaborating with town planning students at the different university. And these two groups start working together on projects, making sure that they understand what's happening, come up with innovative solutions, etc., etc. And what was mentioned there was the fact that the town planning students were brilliant at looking at finding the problems, but not as good at understanding and coming up with solutions, where the information system students were really good at coming up with innovative solutions. And the collaboration of this, so that the flipped classroom really put out the theory there, let them do what they have to do and come back and present back. And we find that these flipped classrooms are really useful in ensuring that continuous engagement. Learning management systems, need I say more? I mean, it is growing by the day. It's getting better and better. We're seeing AI becoming available in Moodle, etc. So I think let's look at that, but be careful in terms of those learning management systems that we don't overload. It is so easy to have too much information available. And as it's already, where do I go? What do I find? And then the question begs, why would I not rather just go to AI and find out what is available? Summarize this for me, rather than trying to find it all myself. I think mobile learning is another pattern. When we see these platforms, see what's available on mobile devices, if I'm on a tablet, it's okay. When I get to a phone where most of your students have access to a smartphone, it becomes a little bit more difficult. What does the design look like? How do I integrate it? How do I make sure that it's there? And then the big problem that we sit with is generally when we look at these platforms, which is developed for the first world, in the third world, data utilization becomes a big issue. We have limited amount of data and it's quite expensive. What we're also seeing is virtual labs and simulations, great initiatives happening there in terms of these virtual labs and what they're able to do and how we do it and so forth. I don't think big enough. We see it at various universities, but it's very localized. So how do we start collaborating in terms of it? Is it possible for us to put 2 or 3 or 4 virtual labs together from various universities and start looking at more regionally and potentially globally? Linked to that with your online projects, collaborative online projects, making sure that we build on the strengths of the various universities. So as you'll hear me say quite often in terms of SARUA, the strength of the network. How do we build on this and make sure that SADC becomes a region to be reckoned with? Then my personal passion is adaptive learning technologies. And as I said, we see more and more of that. And I just want to leave this thought or vision or dream of mine. Imagine we had a tool where I would sit and it will know what I need right now. Do I need to see a video? Do I need to read a text? Do I need to play a game? And as I start becoming more involved, provide more of that, or if I started getting distracted, to provide something else. To generate content in the moment, applicable to exactly what I need right now. So when I say that and say, is that possible? I truly believe it's possible. We just need to start guiding it and we need to start thinking in that direction. So is personalized learning even possible? And if so, how do we do it? Thanks, Mark. I will leave it at that.
Thanks, Abri. Schoeman, how does 2U balance the need for innovative pedagogical practices while maintaining an academic rigor in an online setting? And are there specific instructional design approaches or techniques that you found to be especially impactful?
I think I'll skip the instructional design approaches question because I don't want to give away our secret sauce jokes. From an academic rigor perspective, our university partners are the academic owners of our content. So they will vet anything that we ever present to a student, and it's a different level. So as an example, our Get Smarter courses, we do the course development, the instructional design, the course outlay, and then our faculty members from the universities, they do the review. And then it's once all of the review cycles have been completed, then only we would start marketing and selling the courses. From a degree perspective, and we do undergrad, postgrad degrees. So we do all of the types of degrees that you get. Our university partners have actually developed the course content already, and we help them to go online. So in that respect, I won't go into too much detail, but what I will zoom in on are the technology tools that you asked about. And I intended talking a lot about data analysis as well as learning tools interoperability. And I will drop in the chat for the benefit of the attendees just what I'm talking about. And I'll mention it quickly, but I thought 2 real-world examples might be a bit more meaningful. So from a data analysis perspective, we've done a lot of analysis on our learning, and we found that especially with executive education type courses, so our Get Smarter courses, adult learners do not necessarily have the time to do the work because they have a family and a job and everything else that's associated with life. So what we found was we have bigger engagement and better completion rates if we time box specific modules and have assignments that are due on a specific day that the person needs to submit, as opposed to give a person 6 months or a year or 2 years to do their course. They don't finish it. But if you time box it, then they finish the course because there's that urgency that's driven in it. So here's two real world examples that we use data analysis for. The one was we realized that we are a high touch company. So if our students need assistance, then there is someone who can help, who either via chat or via email or phone call. And we realized that a lot of our student engagement staff spent a lot of time reviewing a request of extensions. So in other words, assignment is due Tuesday evening, and Tuesday morning someone sends an email, can I get an extension to submit this assignment? So we thought, you know what, let's make it easy for the students to learn. We want these students to succeed and we do not want to make it hard. And so we literally put down a button, request extension button. Click on it, choose the reason why you're requesting an extension, and tell us when you're going to submit now. In other words, it's due Tuesday, but I'll submit Thursday morning. And then that it was really successful for us. Because it enabled us to scale our ability to serve our students better, but also it gave the students the ability to manage their own life because you don't know what's going to happen. The other example that we did from a data analysis perspective, we do through a couple of universities in the US, a master's in midwifery. So you have a senior nurse or a nursing sister who wants to do a master's degree to have the ability to be a midwife, and by definition, you can't really learn online how to catch a baby. So we had to figure out how can we do that in a very practical way, give the students the ability to do their it's called a clinical placement at a recognized clinic where babies are born that is recognized by the university that is issuing the degree. So we developed an app, a mobile app that the student opens up, the student looks at the app, it locates the student's location, and then it tells the student there are 15 clinics in a 5-mile, 10-mile, 100-mile radius, depending on what the student wants. And then the student chooses where they want to be placed, and then they go there for their clinical placement to go and help give birth to babies. So those are two real-world examples how we used data to enable the student to learn easier. From a technology tool perspective, something that I would encourage anyone who uses a learning management system, if you use a learning management system and you want to use additional plugins, and I mean Aubrey referred to plugins that the different learning management systems use, I would strongly recommend that you verify whether those plugins are LTI compliant. It stands for Learning Tools Interoperability. It used to be an organization called IMS Global. I see they changed the name to One EdTech. The advantage of you using LTI compliant tools in your learning management system is the following. If for whatever reason the organization decides to change learning management systems and they change to another LTI compliant learning management system, then you can port that content easily over from the one to the other. You don't, it's not a now I have to do everything over again situation. You can actually just port it over, or you can take that same plugin, put it into the new LMS, and then theoretically it should work. Technology isn't always that, but I mean it's closer than not. And I'll use some LMSs that are LTI compliant, Brightspace, Canvas, Blackboard, Moodle, OpenEdX. There's a lot of other ones, iTeach, EduWave, K12, Tutora. The list goes on, but the point is, think about what you use and whether the tool that you're using is interoperable for potentially when your organization decides to do a different digital transformation.
Wonderful, thanks, Schoeman. Gary, considering your experience within executive education, how are you integrating emerging technologies like AI or VR into your pedagogical framework? And are there lessons for leaders in education to take away from how executives learn in digital environments?
So I mentioned this before that we're using text to voice and video tools, and so it's actually not that advanced really, but enables rapid creation of material. And I think one of the challenges in education is keeping up to date and current. And one of my frustrations in the past was the time it takes to get a new course through all the various hoops. And I think the modern student expects, like whether it's an executive or anyone, even people at school, kids, they expect a foundation that's solid, but variable content that's current. And in fact, in some current content, they'll just go and get it on YouTube or somewhere else, So at the executive level, I think particularly they want something that's easy to follow, easy to understand, probably as current as possible. And to Schoeman's point, there's only so much time that they'll give to it, partly because it's in their nature. As a senior person, people like the big picture, and that's what they're good at. The other people do the detail, you hope. And I think in a digital transformation and using these tools for educational purposes, it's understanding how the big picture could change and how you could connect the potential of all these tools to what the vision might be for the next round of an educational approach. And Abri, I can't remember if you mentioned this or not, but transformation, I think you said it's like a journey or something like that. So hopefully people have finally realized there is no such thing as a big bang project. It's just a guaranteed disaster. And so the best approach is a step-by-step approach. And counter to what most technical people would like, the simple things first, not the difficult things first. The technical people, and I'm not picking on anyone like you, Schoeman, but generally people who are technically oriented love the tools and want to play with the tools and get the latest tools using. So there's a balance between business sense in terms of what we can achieve, how much we can spend, how much time we've got, how much skill we have, what's a priority in terms of student need versus all the possibilities that are out there. And I'm presuming, look, I'm not as expert on this as I'm sure other people are, but some of these wheels have already been invented around the world. There are universities around the world who have already done great things. There are already experiences that have happened, and so one of the hopeful advantages in Africa here is that we tend not to have this legacy challenge if we don't want to give up on what we had, from a technology point of view. So we can leapfrog and grab other people's ideas. So I think, again, going back to leaders, who mostly we are, I think, on this call, is having that mindset, and appreciating potentials and trying to make sure things are done properly. Going to the integration point, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that things need to work together. It's always been a challenge. And so as a leader, you ask the question and make sure you get a decent answer. You don't have to understand all the acronyms and all the tools, but you should make sure that you get the right answer. Will this work if I don't need it anymore? Can I replace it?
Yeah. Thanks, Gary.
That's probably enough. Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
So onto our third topic today, which is enhancing engagement. Now, one of the biggest challenges with online or hybrid models is maintaining engagement, as Schoeman alluded to earlier. So let's discuss how we can enhance engagement in these digital environments. Coming back to you, Gary, how do you ensure that learners remain engaged, particularly when working with professionals who are often juggling many responsibilities? What techniques or tools have you found most effective in maintaining their focus?
Look, and I suppose my definition of engagement is probably a bit different to what we're talking about just now, which is that there's the immediate engagement is that people will do whatever it is we've asked them to do in the course, and take on whatever they might have been learning. My engagement is, and I've always been driven by this, and it's a kind of governance way of thinking as well, is, so what's the outcome? What happens next? And in a university, obviously there are pressures to complete the course and complete a term, and then complete an exam, and then hopefully achieve the degree or whatever the qualification might be. But the real engagement is when this has produced something which hopefully matters in life in general, whether it's to stay on in the university to become a researcher or a lecturer or whatever, or to actually get a job. And obviously in this country and in Africa in particular, this is the absolute overwhelming driving need, that we produce people who are capable of doing jobs, and we have jobs that they can go to. And it was funny, I was thinking back to when I did my degree, which I'm afraid is a long time ago. I was working it out just over 50 years ago. And in those days, and I did computer science in the UK, there was only one place that did it actually then as a full-time course, but it was 50-50 at work, 50-50 at university. And you could get yourself sponsored. And so the engagement for me was not just on the training, in the lecture hall or whatever, but it was in the workplace. And luckily for me, I got myself sponsored, so I had a job to go to. But the company also engaged with the university, so they would visit me every term. They would find out what I was up to. They would talk to the lecturers, and it would be a three-way thing. It was everyone was engaged in the outcome, not of an exam pass, but of a person who's capable to use the learning to fulfill a need, and I think that's so. With online learning, I mean, I just find that can rapidly speed that up because so long as it's produced in the right way. And in our executive training, we've moved from learning objectives to organizational outcome as a step in that direction. So if you do this course, this is the organizational outcome you could achieve. So it's working down from that level.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. Schoeman, given 2U's scale, how do you foster engagement among both educators and students? And what role does personalised learning, which you touched on earlier, how does that play into it? And how do you leverage data to enhance the engagement?
How do we leverage data to enhance engagement? That's probably a topic of conversation on a daily basis, because we don't do it enough and we do it a lot. I would say we used AI before it was in fashion. A couple of years ago, we implemented a at-risk model. It's a standard machine learning model. In fact, it's based on debt defaulters. If you for the statisticians, they will know what I'm talking about. But we use the same type of machine learning model to determine whether a student was going to be successful on our course or not, whether they're going to complete the course or not. And then what we do is we proactively reach out to those students. So, for example, we've noticed that a student logged into the learning management system, that's tick 1. They've engaged with module 1, that's tick 2, but they haven't engaged with module 2 or 3, and we're already on module 4. That's a problem. Let's reach out to the student and ask them, is everything okay? So that's definitely one way how we use to proactively reach out to our students. We also have the standard interaction models on our learning platforms like chat, discussion forums, that helps our lecturers, our educators, as well as our students interact with each other. We try and encourage our students to use those discussion forums because on the platform, because then that gives us an indication of how much they interact with it. But what we found is students would invariably create WhatsApp groups and then start interacting with each other on the WhatsApp groups. And then we don't have an idea of how they even interacting with each other. So that's a challenge, and I haven't figured out yet how to solve that problem, but that's definitely another aspect. Then lastly, I would say we've implemented. We really jumped on the generative AI bandwagon. We implemented. We call it the Expert, as in expert, helpful AI chat assistant. You can go into edX.org and Expert will help you choose a course. When you go onto our course, when you've chosen a course, the Expert would have the content already embedded in it, so you can ask it questions. One of my colleagues, he actually started Open edX. He was an MIT. He's still an MIT professor. And one of his courses is circuit analysis, and you can go into his course and ask Expert, explain to me Ohm's law, and it would explain to you Ohm's law and anything else associated with that, as an example. So there, we found that students tend to like to interact with the AI model a lot more than with a human to explain certain concepts, which is something we are still figuring out from a data analysis perspective. Where should we lean in more with AI? Because now all of a sudden you don't need to ask a human being who might judge you for not knowing that V stands for voltage in Ohm's law. You can just ask a machine and the machine doesn't judge you. So there are opportunities to enhance engagement by using the machines to teach our students.
Wonderful. Thanks, Schoeman. Abri, within SARUA, how do you encourage engagement across the various institutions, especially given the challenges of digital access within Southern Africa? Are there specific digital tools or platforms that have been particularly useful in your context?
Thanks, Mark. I think let's link to what Schoeman's just said in terms of low bandwidth communication tools, so WhatsApp. And I always wonder about it and say that we would like to measure and would like to know what students collaborate on, but isn't perhaps more important that they collaborate rather than how they collaborate? So for us as educators, technologists, it would be very interesting. We'd like to help them do that. But the fact that they do collaborate is already a very good point in terms of it. And we see it all over. The moment we are able to get students on a WhatsApp group and they start talking, discussing, etc. Now, linked to that is obviously the wonderful thing of listening in and reading your texts. And I say that tongue in cheek, but you do find that your social platforms like Facebook and Insta and etc. do pick up on these discussions, and more content is provided based on those discussions. So I think low bandwidth, very important. Make sure that we can do it, especially being in Africa and in SADC. We, as much as we do have brilliant bandwidth in some places, sometimes in Cape Town, where I live, it's horrendous. If I'm not on my fiber, I really struggle to do that. And a large number of your students, I would assume, are on mobile networks. So important to start looking at that, engaging and to say how we can do it. And if the clever guys from the U2 can figure out a way to start monitoring it, I think it will help everybody to do that. The other things, I think, in terms of a centralized online portal. So from a SARUA perspective, we are starting to work on that. And so how do we collaborate as universities? How do we make sure that we can start working together? My question when I started in this role was that, but there must be research on digital transformation for higher education. And some of the first responses, no, but who would want that? Well, all of us want it, except that it's not out there. So when we start thinking around this, so what research can be done? How can we collaborate? We have experts across the region that enable us to do that. So such a portal, from a SARUA perspective, we are starting to work on that, putting together a database and start having these discussions. With that, obviously, your virtual meetings and webinars, as we're doing, and we see it more and more happening, where we have discussions we start getting used to these platforms. And I'm quite a big fan of platforms like Miro, where it's a collaborative platform that I can depict my ideas and draw and write and share that with people. And as you might know, they had a big launch a couple of weeks ago in terms of new features. So the amount of tools that's available to help us in terms of collaboration becomes more and more. As I said, I always warn about it and say that there are so many. Which one do I choose, and how do we make sure that it is correct? But from a network perspective, I'm sure we can do that. Then obviously, you know, our open educational resources, there is so much available that we can learn from. And I'll start off from a perspective and say that we, as a nation, especially the newer younger generations, Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, those kind of things, those people like to have instant gratification. I want to know how to do this now. I want to get that information now. Now, as Schoeman has mentioned, in terms of AI, you can tell me more about this. It's one, low bandwidth, it's easy to understand, and I can engage. But with these open resources, we tend to default to YouTube videos, etc., etc. The problem with those is that I don't know who the presenter is. I don't know whether the information they provide is accurate. So I'm going to watch the video, spend some time there, I'm going to try it, and I may succeed or fail. If I fail, I'm going to try something else. So how do we collaborate and make sure we harness that and say this content comes from a credited or acceptable model? As I said, collaborative research projects. So in SARUA, you'll see if you go on the website, there are quite a number of projects that we are doing. And I'm currently involved in two where we collaborate between European and SADC universities, looking at specific items. But there's quite a number of these projects that SARUA is facilitating. But colleagues, it should not be focused only or facilitated only through SARUA. We have this network, we build this network, we get to know each other. So whether SARUA is directly involved or not, let's collaborate. I think that's very important. Obviously, the cloud makes things so much easier. It can become expensive, but there are wonderful tools that makes it possible for us to do that. Now, on a very small basis already, in terms of the projects, we make use of Microsoft Teams as a collaborative platform. The data and documents are available. We can track it. We set up group calendars where all meetings can be posted, etc., etc. So the technology works for us from that perspective. The digital infrastructure, very important as well, to make sure that we have the necessary infrastructure, that we understand where it's going and what can be done. And then lastly, I think important to focus once again on capacity building. What is digital? How does it work? What is digital pedagogy? How does it fit in? Is it different? How does the IR5, Industrial Revolution 5, or Fifth Industrial Revolution, change the way that we think, the change that we engage with technology? So I think a lot of things that we can do in enhancing engagement. What we do need to take to heart is that we have the ability and we have a client base that want instant gratification. I want answers now, and how do I get that? And if I can't get it from you, I will find it somewhere else. Thanks, Marc.
Perfect. Thanks, Abri. I've just noticed we've got just over 5 minutes left until the hour. We've not had any questions, but I noticed the question box wasn't open. So if you did want to ask a question and couldn't, you're welcome to do that now. If I see anything pop through, then I'll make sure that we cover that before we complete the session. But we are on to our final topic of today, which is future-ready education. And this is perhaps the most significant and maybe the most exciting topic to discuss. We're seeing increasing push towards ensuring that education leaders are future-ready. And this means preparing them with the skills and demands of the workforce of tomorrow. So, Schoeman, can I ask how 2U is positioning itself to address the future needs of education, and what innovations do you think education leaders should prioritise to ensure their institutions are future ready?
So there's this story that one of the presidents of one of our university partners tell. And president in the US for a university is like the rector of our universities in South Africa. He tells a story of he grew up in the town where Kodak was, and we all know what happened to Kodak. and his analogy that he uses, or the parallel that he pulls between that, was that TU helped his university go online so that his university didn't become another Kodak. And post-COVID, I would say the relevance of brick and mortar institutions is more important now than ever, because people realize that they need that human interaction, not just sitting at home attending courses online. So how do you marry those two? And I would say one thing that we are definitely focusing on is the current buzzword, generative AI. It is a very, very powerful tool, and you can use it across the entire student life cycle. And what I mean by that is, from helping students to apply for courses, especially applying for degrees, can be a daunting task, and AI could assist with that enrollment, the administration of the course. So you load all your frequently asked questions into a database, and you get the Gen AI to answer questions for students, course content, interventions, even grading. All of those aspects, generative AI can play a very large role. What I would leave the group as a thought, and unfortunately I've got a hard stop at 3, is you need to have your data in place. Normally, most institutions, most organizations who do education have data, and normally it's disparate. And I would invest, if I were to invest into something, I would invest into getting the data in a consumable format, because there are a lot of generative AI tools where you can just plug and play your data, but it's getting that data in the right state so that you can use those generative AI tools, and there are a lot of them.
Great, thanks so much, Schoeman. If we don't have time at the end, I want to thank you now for your participation today. We really appreciate your insights, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to head over to Gary now. Based on your history in education and your recent research, what skills do you believe will be the most in demand in the coming decade, and how should education leaders today pivot their curriculum or digital infrastructure to align with the future workforce needs?
So look, in the time we've got, keep this brief, but I think it's the fundamental point I think is crucial is first of all having the mindset to be innovative and to get help to find out, you know, what the possibilities are. But as leaders, tie them to some outcomes that you know we want to aim for. So the student enrollment outcome, as an example. You know, I think everyone would know, I would imagine, that it's a pain and a high cost and probably faulty. So as leaders, there should be a goal that we're trying to aim for, that this might help. If we don't have a goal, then we're just playing with technologies, you know, and so it's the leaders that have to make that connection. And that's what, you know, at the executive level, we've always been trying to teach, and then tying the goal to a benefit. And then once we go into implementing something, that we track that, you know, the goal is going to be achieved and is being achieved. Otherwise, you know, not too often we set the goal, think about the technology, get immersed in the technology and lose sight of the goal, and may go down a path where we don't even deliver the benefit that we had originally hoped for. And that's the worst of all evils, because we'll end up spending a lot of money for nothing and get demoralized. So, you know, that's the message I would give to the group here, you know, and to agree, you don't have to have every outcome at once. And maybe as a pilot, pick one that could be a quick win. That's how we got the name IT Winners 20 odd years ago. Go for quick wins. As a demonstrator, as a flagship, and a confidence booster, you know.
Great, thanks, Gary. Okay. Finally, Abri, from your perspective, what future trends should regional education systems in Africa be preparing for, and how do you envision digital transformation shaping education over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Thanks, Mark. I think to be brief here, because it's such a large topic, and I think we can do a webinar on its own on this topic. But the whole point is that I think our learners and our students have become more tech savvy, and they want to use what they want to use. So it becomes difficult to provide everything and be everything for everybody. But in terms of the tools that becomes available for AI, etc., how do we start utilizing these tools to make sure that we do provide what is necessary? If we don't, I'm afraid that we might end up in a situation where students would not want to come to university anymore. We see that from various industry advisory boards and comments from lecturers, and saying that on the one side, I'm not getting what I'm expecting from a student, but the fields are getting larger and larger, and it might become more and more. So after a 3 or 4 year degree, are you able to do a job, or do you still need on-the-job training? So that's the one side of it. On the opposite side of that, we have shorter courses. We've got the Microsoft courses, we've got the AWS courses, etc., that equip you to do a very specific job at that point in time. And understanding what it is that the employers need, what it is the students need, and how do we make sure, and how do we make use of technology to provide that to them. And from there we can look at all the various components of it, whether it's the learning management system, the different modalities, whether it is personalization, adaptive learning, and whether it is using AI or augmented or virtual reality modules that we use. So it's really a point in time where we have to sit and hard evaluate what is available and what can be used to make sure that we retain the students and equip them for the future. So I would leave it at that. Thanks, Mark.
Lovely. Thanks, Abri. It looks like that's all we've got time for today, but Abri, could you flash up the contact details on that slide? And if anyone does have any questions that they had that we didn't have time to answer, you're welcome to get in touch with any of the panel today, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer directly. Otherwise, once we send out information following the webinar, you can always reply with those questions, and we'll make sure that we get them answered. We do have a copy of your comments, so thank you for sharing those. As we draw to a close, I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Schoeman, to Abri, and to Gary for sharing your expertise with us today. It's clear that digital literacy and pedagogy will play a crucial role in shaping the leaders of tomorrow's education, and it's comforting to know that there are organisations and people out there from within our own region who are out there innovating, leading change, and challenging the status quo. So thank you to our audience for your participation. I hope we sparked some ideas or some food for thought, at least to give you some things to think about. Please keep an eye on your inbox for follow-up materials from today's session. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you and helping you become more digitally equipped for the future of education. So until next time, thanks so much for joining us.